Hello. Okay, this is going to be what I hope will be the first in a series of messages from the Arcturians. I have channeled a little bit of information from the Arcturians. Specifically, they identified a Arcturian collective, which means the entire collective group of beings that center around this section of space called Arcturus. When we're dealing with this type of thing, it could be several races, it could be several hundred races, but the beings that sort of originate from that general area have a collective unity consciousness. Okay? Like if you were to tap into the oneness of all humans who have incarnated on Earth, you would be tapping into a rich and diverse source of feeling, thinking, behaving, etc., obviously. But there is something that binds them all together. And so when you're talking about the Arcturian collective, you're talking about all those beings from all the star systems around that little jumbled area of space that in some ways communicated with and influenced each other's evolution, something like that. I haven't gotten as specific as, which stars and systems and which planets they were from or anything like that. It is a collective. Then I also started talking to Arcturian Elders. Apparently they have some type of high council or something like that, and the Elders, the energy feels very different. The collective, it was like this even keel form of consciousness, and I could tell that it was on every other one, even though it was more than one. It was like a multitude of consciousnesses. They were all on the same page. They were all on par with each other, basically. Like they were all agreeing as one voice. So that was the collective. Whereas the council, which is actually to say the elders, were much more highly personalized. And they said that that is because as a race, as a whole, we represent unity, love, joy, meekness, compassion, ascension, and so on. As a group of elder beings, we represent stores and stores of ancient knowledge and experience. And in order to adequately convey this knowledge and experience to you, we must communicate in a much more subjective and characteristic way. That was the word that really stood out for me, characteristic, is that this group of beings, whether they were an aspect of the entire unity consciousness of the Arcturians, something in my eye, or they were like a specific group of, 9 beings who call themselves the Arcturian Elders, is beside the point. Whether that was the case or not, they were much more characteristic, which is to say they had much more distinct personalities than the collective as a whole. Okay, so I'm just going to read what I have. There's not a lot of information channeled out there about the Arcturians. I kept hearing Arcturan for some reason, and that's what I wrote, but I'll read Arcturian because it's the accepted standard. First the thing I did is I was talking to them specifically, and I wanted to know about my oversoul. So this is a little bit of a personal, I'm just going through my information here. I'm not going to read that. Okay. This is from 4/17/11. They told me that I need to bring these messages to more people more often, and then this is basically the message for all of you. You are not alone. You are part of an intricately interwoven divine fabric that includes countless other races and beings and forms of consciousness. We are an echo of the past and a vision of the future. People need to know that we have been assisting you without rest for as long as you have been present on this planet. As a group, as a council, we have taken a vested interest in what is happening to the human race at this point in your development. We are working harder than ever to support you in your race to the finish line, so that when you cross it, you will break through to a higher form of existence. Then a new presence started to take over. It was more singular, as it was like almost like one voice stepping out among the many to speak. And it said, tell them we are a divine race of beings who once incarnated in the third dimension in which you now exist, but have since moved on to other forms of consciousness. Many who are awakening now on your planet are star seeds from our collective unity consciousness. Many are from elsewhere. Those whose essences center around Arcturus, and caveat, footnote, center around Arcturus. Think back to what I said at the beginning of the video. Not just the little star system Arcturus, but surrounding systems and planets as a whole, have, in many cases, been hiding in the background for a very long time, waiting until the time is right, or until they can adequately, for themselves, describe in intimate detail the journey they've had and the knowledge and experience they've encountered. It is these ones who will suddenly be cast into the forefront of your ascension movement as pioneers for individualized collective ascension. Individual starseeds from Arcturus find it very painful and difficult to experience the separation, which is your norm. Because of this deep pain and the individual starseed's reaction to it while experiencing your world, they become deeply aware of the problems caused and encountered through separation. We are all one, we are all unity consciousness, even the so-called darker entities that seek to destroy and interfere. We are all aspects of Source, capital S. However, most beings in this universe have the advantage of being aware of some other forms of consciousness, while you have the unique disadvantage of being seemingly cut off from communication with these other forms of consciousness. The abilities of some of you to tune into and communicate with other forms of consciousness are the standard forms of communication to countless other beings. The ability to perceive the divine web of creation and tune one's own consciousness to perceive another's is an ability typically developed at a much earlier stage in the evolution of other beings. Get some water. Excuse me. Okay. 4/21/11. So you can see this is very recent that I've been channeling this information. And it's been more than an interesting process. I guess I'll just take this moment to say that a lot of my being centers around the Arcturians. That's all I'll say. And I didn't know that until very recently, because this group of beings, or this collective form of consciousness, is not one to kind of like jump out into the limelight and say, hey, guess what? You know, they're not like, I don't know what they are. It's difficult to describe. Yes. And what has been most interesting and joyful and enjoyable for me doing this is how natural the communication has been. You can see that they're, in a way, using my sentence structures. So it's like, oh, well, are they my sentence structures or are they theirs? You know, it's that mind-boggling for me, the similarities and the ease with which I can tap into this consciousness. It's disturbing. I'll just continue reading. So I guess I just wanted to say that it's been, you know, not easy, but very, very fluid. It's like I tap into the consciousness, and it's just like, it's not like this big energetic shift has to come over me, and I do my thing, and then I'm in the Arcturian consciousness. It's just sort of like, oh, turned it on, there it is, and then we communicate. 4/21/11. It is a great pleasure for us, when invited, to see your world through your eyes. And they mean any of us, not just me. It is a cherished gift and opportunity for all sentient beings in the higher planes to experience three-dimensional reality as you experience it. This is what is really meant by the transition about which you are all currently preoccupied. It is not a simple movement of your bodies or spirits or consciousnesses from one plane to another. It is the very reformation of your dimension as you know it, from a once three-dimensional space of separation and distance to a plane that allows for the access to and integration of all other planes of existence. This is a complicated idea, and I don't feel like I was conveying adequately the information that was coming through, but I think I'll get to it. I'm going to read that separation. I'm going to read that sentence again. It is the very reformation of your dimension as you know it from a once three-dimensional space of separation and distance to a plane that allows for the access to and integration of all other planes of existence. What they're basically saying is that as dimensions or planes of existence and experience evolve, there's a point at which they are, let's say, doubled or tripled in their core inherent aspects, so that if the core inherent aspect of the third dimension is one of separation, then we are currently in that stage which most dramatically emphasizes the separation. So we're not just living in a world of separation, we're living in a world of separation within separation. At least that's the sense that I was getting, and that we are not about to necessarily all as a collective shift into a new dimension. This dimension itself is changing, so that when it does change, we will have the perception of other planes of existence as well as this one. Something like that. Okay, it's really complicated information, so the other thing that was kind of baffling for me, which was that this was all pouring through me. Moving on. This has to happen on all levels of awareness, though it is certainly not as drastic for others as it has been for you, meaning the human race. Yours is truly the plane of separation, and separation operating within separation is a fairly new concept and level of consciousness evolution. Now, I was reading this again later, and I was like, well, that doesn't really make sense with something that you said before, and so then I asked the question as an afterthought. A few things rise to my mind, says I. If your race has existed in the third dimension before, why is it still painful for beings from your collective essence to incarnate here? Wouldn't you have experienced the same separation that we endure? And they said, you must understand that evolution is happening on and to all planes of existence and all levels of awareness simultaneously. While many of you consider yourselves to be ascending on the third dimension at a certain point in your linear solar-based history, you must understand that the third dimension itself is ascending as well. How is this possible? Dimensions are not static. They exist as a progression. One seeps into and blends into another in an infinite spiral. Some dimensions include boundaries that begin to break down as they transition into higher, more complex dimension, whilst simultaneously including the uniqueness of their previous lower forms. Consciousness progresses in exactly the same fashion, and of course the progression of a dimension is not at all separate from, but inextricably linked to, the progressions of individual consciousness. In many senses, yes, we as a race have existed in your dimension of separation, but it was in a moment in the progression of consciousness where the surrounding circumstances were wholly different. A moment when your particularly unique circumstances were not in place. You exist in a moment of separation within separation, a third-dimensional awareness within a third-dimensional plane. Our race existed in your dimension at a time when this level of separation was not yet fully realized. Again, dimensions are not static, just as consciousness is not static. We progressed to higher planes, while lower planes were still being conceived and formed. Crazy stuff. Okay. Ooh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Your transition will only be a rocky one if you do not allow yourself to easily and casually slip between modes of awareness and various simultaneous multidimensional perceptions. I pronounce simultaneous 2 ways in this video. Dang. For instance, our channel, Sadaka, is equally aware of the information coming through him from us, of the fact that the information is being filtered through his own murky consciousness, of his desire for another sip of coffee, and many personal hesitations, hang-ups, and feelings in between. But his connection to us is so great, greater than he yet has come to accept, that he is also at least partially aware of the fact that his filters are in fact our own, and that the information being received versus the information being translated are not all that dissimilar. It is a complex process of give and take that he is only now beginning to become accustomed to. Ain't that the truth, sister? Being accustomed to this mode of operation is sort of multidimensional multitasking, or allowing yourself to both accept the perceptions coming through that are both a part of and discrete from you, and allowing yourself to be aware of and accept that which originates solely from you, that is, from your unique position of third-dimensional separation, is profoundly important for the coming age. What a sentence! The words accept and allow... start over. The words accept and allow must be emphasized here. You must accept and allow for a being outside of yourself to come into your awareness, adequately move out of the way, which is to say, you put your own hesitations and resistances aside, interpret the information and energy coming through you, and then, if you wish, either continue the exchange or discontinue the exchange. Of course, it must be said that in functioning in multidimensional awareness, outside beings are not really outside of you, and the exchanges and communications that occur are on a much different level of awareness than you can currently conceive. There is a certain knowingness between beings in these dimensions that they are indeed one, that they are indeed all connected, but it is not as though all beings are commingling in one giant pool of souls. The singularity or uniqueness of one's own consciousness remains ever in the forefront of one's awareness. The strangeness and difficulty you may experience during the process of communication or exchange of information with other beings in the higher dimensions are only a small part of what you need to prepare yourselves for. The issue of choice will become of paramount importance as well, as will your ability to manifest. Remember that you will still exist in a world of separation, but one that has made the leap toward integration. Things will happen so rapidly after this transition it may seem that nothing can go wrong, but be aware that your continual participation in and devotion to this experiment is absolutely required for it to continue in the right direction. You have a responsibility to yourselves and those around you and countless other beings in the universe as you make your way into a new world with new abilities, new dangers, and new obstacles. That's as far as I've gotten so far. So yeah, there's a lot of information going through here, and again, the afterthought after I asked a question and about their race, quote unquote, existing in the third dimensional plane before and pain of separation. After that, 1 to 2 paragraphs where it starts, your transition will only be a rocky one if that. All that and everything that came after, I channeled that first, and then the afterthought paragraph I added later because it was an afterthought. How long is this video? I can't tell. Anyway, yeah. So that's the stuff I got. It's pretty crazy, you know. I'm thinking of like oneness, the teachings, and a lot of the stuff that was coming through was just like obvious. And yes, I will admit I'm biased. I have read about this stuff before. It's not like I don't know anything about multiple dimensions and multiple levels of awareness and holding yourself in that fashion or whatever. I do. And so if you want to think that I was just pulling it out of my head, that's fine. If you think I was channeling somebody and you like the information, great. Give me a comment. Okay, goodbye.